day in Skelibate became a wintry night. Foes from below blood on the snow, bright crimson on white. A madman's story of ancient glory brought death from far away. For eldritch power did Mangar scour the depths of Skelibate. Snow in summer, ice in my heart, death's cold fingers tear us apart. Snow in summer, ice in my heart, death's cold fingers tear us apart.
Hey, RetconRaider here, and today we're looking at the newly released alpha test for Bard's Tale 4 by InXile Entertainment. Now, before we get started, just keep in mind this is an early alpha. It's pretty rough around the edges, there are placeholders, there are incomplete features, but this gives us a good idea of what the developers have planned for the final product. Since this is just a tech demo, there's not a lot of story involved, but we've basically come to Castle Longskull to hunt down a wraith named Lagoth Zanta, which I'm sure I pronounced wrong. Let's go take a look at our party. This is, of course, the character and inventory screen. Down here, you can see the basic formation grid.
Coming through. I'll just squeeze by.
You can move your characters around here to change their starting positions in combat. Combat in Bard's Tale 4 essentially takes place on a 4x4 square grid, and exact positioning is very important. We'll spend some more time talking about the combat system a little later, but for now, let's meet our adventurers. The Green Lady here is a 12th level Elven practitioner, which of course means she's physically frail, but also capable of casting powerful spells on the battlefield. Her race and class grant her several passive abilities, all of which revolve around spell points, which are of course what your characters use to fuel their spells. It's interesting to note that neither of these weapons can actually be used to attack. Rather, they each give her an extra mastery slot, which is what adventurers use to actively equip spells and abilities. In this case, the Green Lady has the Meditate ability, which lets her build up spell points faster, Dragon Breath, which damages and ignites enemies in a T-shaped formation in front of her, and War Strike, which inflicts massive damage on up to 2 targets, but which is also so powerful it takes a full turn to cast. As the player progresses through the game, their characters will naturally accrue additional masteries, mostly from using equipment or increasing in level. If the player ever wants to change their current masteries, they can do so using a simple drag-and-drop interface. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and swap out War Strike in favor of Arcane Barrage, which is a weaker but faster single-target spell. I can certainly see a slow but powerful spell like War Strike being useful against boss enemies, but we don't really need it in the current alpha test. Next we have Dalgliash, a level 8 Dwarven fighter. As a Dwarven fighter, he can use potions more effectively, and he's immune to being stunned or knocked down. He only has a single mastery slot, which he's currently using to equip the Taunt ability, which is fine because he's essentially the party's tank. He's the only one of our adventurers who's trained to use Plate Mail, which grants points of armor and directly reduces the amount of damage he suffers from physical attacks. He's also got some healing potions, and he's equipped with a rusty hatchet. Unlike the Green Lady's weapons, the rusty hatchet actually has its own unique attack ability, the Woodman's Chop. He'll be able to use this ability as long as he has the weapon equipped, but if he uses the weapon long enough to master it, then the ability will actually be added to his list of masteries. That would allow him to equip and use the Woodman's Chop ability in battle, even if he doesn't have the rusty hatchet equipped. This mechanic is actually pretty interesting because it actively encourages the player to try out different pieces of equipment. That way they can collect a wide assortment of abilities, which they can then use to fine-tune their preferred strategies in combat. Our last party member is Fiona the Harper, a human bard. The game presents bards as an interesting mix between party animals and the more conventional fantasy bard. Bards rely on alcohol as their source of spell points in battle, which they then channel into magic songs that buff their allies and debuff their enemies. Bards are generally also a little more versatile than other classes. In Fiona's case, she moves a little faster in combat, and she gains an extra ability point every few levels. Fiona wears medium armor, which boosts her constitution but doesn't actually grant any points of armor. She also comes equipped with a tankard, which is mandatory if you want her to cast any spells. Fiona's weapon of choice is the Iron Shillelagh, a weapon that inflicts mental damage that ignores armor and can disrupt channeled abilities. She has a rusty cornu in her offhand that lets her curse her opponents, causing them to take extra damage from any attack. The last item she has equipped is a pair of leather boots, which appears to be the source of her passive nimble ability. Though it's interesting to note that it looks like there's a mastery tracker for the basic move ability. That does seem a bit odd. Aside from that, Bard's Tale 4 looks like it's going to have a fairly basic crafting system. You can't really use it in the current alpha test, but it looks pretty straightforward. I'm guessing that once the player has the right ingredients, they just click the craft button, and then the finished item appears in their inventory. At any rate, I've kept you waiting long enough. Let's get started.
Lying skulls ahead. How about a rhyme, lass, to lift our spirits?
Well, I'll do my best. Let's see. To Xanta's lair came heroes fair, to make him weep and cry. Oh, who do I think I'm kidding? We're all gonna die.
That's the spirit. Now, obviously, we need to find a way to get this gate open. It probably has something to do with that odd panel next to the gate, but we do have a special non-combat ability that lets us smash down weak walls. Of course, in this case, it doesn't actually work on this gate. I actually haven't found anything it works on in the current alpha test, but I'll still be keeping an eye out, just in case. You'll notice that interactive objects are automatically highlighted when you look towards them. That does hurt immersion a little bit, but it's nice to be able to tell if an item is just decorative by glancing at it. Our goal here is to set up a continuous chain of gears so that all of them are turning. We can move the gears by interacting with them, but they always move as far as possible along the track. So of course, we just have to move them in the right order. There we go. Let's move on. Now we're being funneled forward into the next encounter. I imagine that in the final game things will be a bit more open, but for the purposes of the alpha test, they obviously want to take you on more of a guided experience. It's also worth mentioning that while we're currently in free move mode with head bob turned on, there will also be a tile-by-tile movement system.
You'll never power the blade like that! You useless bowbag! And
I couldn't really make out most of what that guy just said. Unfortunately, they haven't actually enabled subtitles in the current alpha test.
What wickedness is this?
That's a good question, Fiona. Let's see if we can get the drop on them.
there! Attack!
Whoops. Well, we've been spotted.
Let the killing commence!
This, of course, brings us to the first combat encounter in the current alpha test. Like I said before, we're on a basic 4x4 combat grid, and every one of your abilities has a specific area of effect. In the case of Fiona's Iron Shillelagh, she'll attack the closest target up to 2 spaces directly in front of her. Since she suffered knockback right at the beginning of combat, she can just barely reach the cultist in front of her. Of course, it's also important to note that we only have a finite number of actions we can take each turn. These blue diamonds down here represent opportunity, which is basically the entire party's shared action pool. Most abilities, like Fiona's Head Knocker attack here, require at least 1 point of opportunity to activate. Most abilities also have a short cooldown timer. Every different ability has its own unique costs and benefits, so it's up to the player to assemble a collection of abilities that they feel are the most effective in combat. In this case, let's go ahead and have Fiona chug some booze. Now we'll finish off the cultist with her shillelagh. Now, the Green Lady needs time to build up spell points,
Do not allow them to focus.
so our Dwarven fighter will keep the other cultist distracted with his taunt ability.
I'm gonna beat you like an anvil.
Come here and say that.
We've still got 1 point of opportunity, so we might as well have it make an attack before we end our turn. Okay, with no more opportunity left, we're pretty much done for the turn, but we do still have some options. For example, Fiona's spells cost spell points to cast, but they don't require any opportunity. Of course, in this case we're about to win the fight anyway, so we'll just have her save her spell points. We're out of opportunity, and the Green Lady is busy meditating, so we might as well just end our turn.
Strike! I am protected by Yadis.
Now we'll finish off that second cultist. But the fight's not over yet.
Your story ends here.
We're up against Wave 2, so now we'll have Fiona use that spell point.
What's happened to me?
We've just cursed all the enemies to take extra damage from our attacks. We'll immediately move the Green Lady up to take full advantage of that. Alright, that took out one cultist, and the cultist Bowman will burn to death right after his next action.
Gods will not
We've still got
save
2
you.
opportunity left, so let's bring Fiona up to the front row and have her chug a little more booze.
Bottoms up.
No drink will save you.
Of course, she didn't actually hit anyone with that thrown tankard, but that's fine. We took a couple of light hits, and now the bowman dies. Okay, time for Wave 3.
We will drink your blood.
Now we're up against 2 cultists, a bowman, and a spellcaster. There's no way for us to kill all of them in a single round, so
Have you done?
we just shrunk 3 of the cultists, which will temporarily cut the power of their attacks in half. Now we'll pull the Green Lady back a space and hit the 2 lead cultists with some dragon fire. Both of those cultists will burn to death after their next action, so now we can focus on the bowman and the caster.
I will end you.
First we'll have our fighter taunt the bowman.
Did you make that armor yourself?
You dare speak thus to one of the chosen.
Now we'll have Fiona move over, so she can start softening up that caster.
Passing through. Bottoms up.
No drink will save you.
death in stereo. We've pretty much won the fight at this point, so let's just wrap things up.
Cheers.
No drink will save us.
Eating my brain!
Now we just need to finish off the bowman. Oh, we actually don't have enough opportunity. That's fine. He can live for one more turn.
Please excuse.
I do not fear you.
Okay, time to cast Magic Missile at the darkness. Obviously, we are going to talk to the guy with the sword through his head, but let's check out the loot first. Let's see what we've got here. A thistle seed, a bluebell seed, a lily seed, rusty sacrificial dagger, cultist's journal, and red colewort. I can't say I'm crazy about that treasure chest animation, but we'll ignore that for now. First, we've got the rusty sacrificial dagger. This weapon requires training and daggers to use. You can actually see down on the combat grid that only the Green Lady meets that requirement. This weapon would give her a pretty powerful physical attack, but it would also cost her Constitution to use it. I think she's better off sticking with spells. We also picked up these 3 seeds, which, on closer examination, are actually elven gemstones. And then we've got this journal. Obviously, we should probably take a closer look at that. 10th day of Maiden's Month. Curse these cunning elven smiths and their impenetrable metaphors. What is the verse on the pommel supposed to mean? Thy violet hue doth pride imbue, while spiky head fills foes with dread. It almost seems as if it speaks of a flower, but that can't be it. Not even an elf would be so unmanly as to hide the power of his weapon behind rhymes about pansies and daffodils. To what horned purple demon does this refer? Or is it some kind of dragon unknown in the human realm? Or a particularly angry ogre? How will I ever know? 13th day of Maiden's Month. Wait, I have it! Violet is the color of a man strangled, and an impaled man terrifies all. Thus the rhyme must suggest a sacrifice where the victim is strangled, then stabbed through the head with a weapon. Of course! Why didn't I think of it before? We must try this at once. Well, that certainly explains some things. I guess that means we should probably have a chat with Mr. Swordface here.
Can you believe this? The idiots didn't even kill me properly. Can't get a good hold of it. Oh, I'd give my right eye for her. What are you looking at?
Right, sorry, I was being rude. Of course, this is normally where we'd be able to choose dialogue options, but for the purposes of the alpha test, our options are limited. You've got something in your eye.
You don't say. Stupid numpties thought using it to kill me would wake up its magic. Tried to tell them they just had to solve the puzzles, but would they listen? Ha! Know them!
Yeah, they didn't really seem like the brightest bunch.
Now get this elven pig sticker out of my face and let me die!
Sure, let me just help you with that.
What a relief.
Well, he is dead. But on the bright side, we got a fancy new sword. This is our first elven puzzle weapon. Aside from looking ridiculously ornate, it also has 3 integrated puzzles. For each one of those puzzles we solve, it gains an additional passive ability, making it increasingly useful in combat. Thy violet hue doth pride imbue, while spiky head fills foes with dread. Alright, well, we did just find a bunch of elven gemstones, so I'm guessing we probably need to use the violet one. Of course, this is just the alpha test. Maybe the puzzle weapons in the final game will be more involved. Now that we've solved the first riddle, we've also unlocked the weapon's first boon. In this case, the sword will now strip armor with every hit. Of course, if we had tried using the wrong gemstone, then we would have ended up cursing the weapon instead. Let's take a look at the next puzzle. Again, this is a pretty straightforward puzzle. You can see 2 purple gemstones, one on the left and one on the right. All we have to do is rotate the bands on the hilt until we create a continuous circuit from one gem to the other. It's not terribly difficult, but it is a bit time-consuming, so let's skip forward real quick. And like magic, it's done. We've now unlocked the weapon's second boon, which gives it a chance to ignite enemies with every strike. We've still got one more puzzle to solve, so let's take a look. Sick and tired of endless squabbling? For sweet relief, just kill a goblin. Not exactly what I'd expect from elven poetry, but I get the idea. We'll keep an eye out for goblins to kill. Alright, we solved 2 out of 3 puzzles, so I think we've done everything we can for now. Let's hop back out to our inventory and have our fighter equip the new sword. Strange. Fiona's not in the rotation. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Now let's just take a moment to rearrange our formation and...
Pardon?
Then we'll get back to exploring.
May I pass?
Pardon?
Pardon me.
We're obviously supposed to go through that giant door right in front of us, but let's take a moment to walk around the courtyard first. There's a statue we can't reach. There's a couple of barrels we can interact with. And there's some doors we can't go through. I'm assuming that in the final game we'll actually be able to go through some of these doors. Anyway, let's go check out those barrels. Let's check the other side of the courtyard. Poor guy. Rest in peace. Healing potions and haggis. There's another thistle seed. Nothing we can interact with here. Another healing potion and a hellebore seed. That's new. More doors we can't go through. I think that's everything. Let's go check out that door. Nice place. Okay, first things first, Let's head up to that shrine there. And we've got some kind of creature moving around above us. Let's get a closer look at that. Oh, more cultists. Let's try eavesdropping.
How is that thing even alive?
Where's the other half?
Someone needs to give it a hand. And a foot.
Looks like it was put together by a 3-year-old.
If I told someone I'd seen that thing, they'd say that I'd been drinking.
I've seen things like that in my nightmares. Maybe I'm having one now.
Okay, it sounds like they're just talking about that monster, but we just spotted a chest. Let's circle around and check that out. Nothing we can interact with. Wait, there's a book. Book of Elven Weapon Lore. As anyone who has studied the fair folk knows, the elves hold nature in the highest regard, and much of their ornament and design takes an inspiration from the shapes and colors of various flora and fauna. This is particularly true of elven puzzle weapons, which are designed to represent the seeds, roots, leaves, and petals of flowering plants. The Elven Weapon. Each weapon has a pommel, and each pommel accepts only a gem of a particular color, with the gems representing the seeds of various plants. A blue gem represents the seed of a bluebell, green the seed of hellebore, white the lily, yellow the daffodil, and purple the thistle. With the seed gem removed, the weapon is not but a plain, though finely made, blade or bludgeon. But with the seed inserted and the pommel puzzle solved, it is imbued with magic, and the other puzzles, those of root and leaf, awaken. I guess the cultists never got around to reading this. Okay, we can see some sort of interactive columns over there. There's also clearly a wall blocking our path to that chest we saw. Let's go take a look at those symbols we passed on the way here. That's definitely the right number of symbols, but... Oh, I see. Okay, let's head back.
Well, what have we here?
It must be my birthday.
Let's see what we found. We found some haggis, not that we need it. We found some new shoes, which reduce the cost of spells after a movement action. That's useful. We found potions, which temporarily increase our power. And we found the Razor. A dagger which inflicts significant physical damage and poisons the target. That's actually a pretty decent weapon. Let's go back out to the main room and move some things around in our inventory. Okay, first of all, let's have the Green Lady equip that new dagger. That's going to cost her one of her mastery slots, but that's fine. The poison dagger is actually better than her barrage spell anyway. And of course, if she keeps the weapon equipped long enough, she'll permanently learn that ability. We'll also have her equip those new shoes we found. That'll make it a little easier for her to use Dragon Fire in combat. I guess while we're here, we should have her equip some healing potions too, just in case. Let's jump over to Fiona and take a look at her masteries. Alright, she currently has Wayland's Watch equipped, which is a nice combat debuff, but I think we'll get better use out of that healing ability. That's everything we can do for the moment, so let's move on. Langskull history. Castle Langskull has been many things in its history, from a humble wooden hill fort when the Enar first arrived on the island, to a small but sturdy tower house when the Jarls of Stronsea first united the Isles, to the grand hall it is now, built when Wyre's trade with Caith and the continent was at its zenith. Lament of Langskull. But no matter what form it has taken, the sad truth is that Langskull has always been cursed. Though the fortunes of the Enar have, on the whole, mostly risen over the centuries, with their wealth and influence increasing, and the contentment of their people the envy of many a kingdom, the rivalries and intrigues that have riven the families that have held the castle's magnificent throne have made its history one of tragedy and heartbreak, of murder and betrayal, of fratricide and patricide for generation upon generation upon generation. Well, considering that it's currently full of cultists and monsters, that might actually be a bit of an understatement. Let's check out this last hall and then we'll head upstairs. Oh, hey. This wall actually looks pretty weak. Let's try using that wall breaking ability. We just broke something. Well, what do we have here? I've actually never seen this before. Alright, looks like we found a new room. We can clearly see a chest on the other side, but it's being guarded by that cultist janitor. Let's take out that janitor before he spots us. Now, hold on a second.
Come closer. Our blades thirst.
Was he sweeping the floor with that blade? I feel like I just got bamboozled. Okay, we're actually up against what must be the strongest enemy in the current alpha test.
Cheers.
That will be your last.
With 21 points of physical armor, most of our attacks won't even scratch him. But we can still hurt him with things like mental damage.
Good to the last drop.
Now let's hit him with a dragon fire spell.
May I pass?
That didn't do any immediate damage, but the ongoing fire damage will also ignore his armor.
Come on, you tinkers!
Say that again, I dare ye!
Now we'll pull him over to our fighter and he can put that new sword to use. He won't do a lot of damage, but he'll destroy armor with every hit.
Plunge.
Okay, it looks like he's using a channeled ability.
Come closer. Our blades thirst.
That stripped off even more of his armor, but it didn't disrupt his channeled ability.
Coming through.
Only mental damage can break focus.
Pardon?
There we go. Let's see what they do this time.
Cheers.
You are history. Fire!
Okay, we shouldn't have any problems finishing this.
I'll just squeeze by.
Passing through.
There we go. Now he should burn to death after his next action.
I will bleed you.
Bottoms up.
Let me show you how it's done.
We'll mop up the bowman next turn.
Here, stand aside. I will end you.
We're actually not in an ideal position to finish these guys off. We'll have to spend some of our opportunity getting into position.
Please excuse.
Still too weak.
Yeah, these guys get to live for one more turn.
I will bleed you.
Do-si-do. Plunge.
I will waste no more time on you. Move! Stand aside!
Wow, they really don't like the Green Lady.
Est-Endrati. Good to the last drop.
Let it flush.
Stepping past. Come on, you tinkers!
You will pay for that
To
treatment.
the last drop.
Flames!
Well, that wasn't so bad. Let's have a look around. There's some new boots for our fighter. Nice. That'll make him a little more mobile in combat. Oh my. Let's see here. We've got the Killer of the Dead, which is a whip that inflicts bonus damage to the undead. That's probably a Castlevania reference. We've got another Shillelagh, which seems to do more damage than the one Fiona has equipped. We've got a new pickaxe, which does massive damage. Oh, but you have to channel for a turn before each attack. Then we've got the Mothran Arming Sword, which lets you move and attack as part of a single action. That actually sounds pretty promising. There's also a couple of armor potions, but at this point I really don't think we're going to need them. Okay, I think we're done here. Let's head back to the healing shrine. Now let's see here. I'm pretty happy with that elven sword, so I don't think we're going to change our fighter's weapon. But we will have Fiona use that new Shillelagh. Oh, wait a minute. It is the same weapon. It just showed a different damage rating because we had our fighter selected at the time. It looks like she can also equip arming swords. That means she could use the whip, but there are no undead in the current alpha test. That Mothran sword, though, that's a maybe. We'll be right back. I just want to look at all our options.
Passing through.
I'll just squeeze by.
Do-si-do.
Okay, sorry to keep you waiting. We've equipped Fiona with a new sword, and we've changed our formation to take her new mobility into account. Let's go take out that last group of cultists. Okay, The cultists aren't really paying attention, but they've got that little monster patrolling the landing for them. Let's move around to the other side and catch them by surprise.
What's that? Prepare yourselves.
At this point, you should have a pretty good idea of how combat works, so I'll keep the commentary to a minimum. We'll just cut these guys to pieces and move into the final room.
Your soul will feed the fun here.
May I pass?
Dragon! Get out of my...
Excuse.
Stand aside.
Pardon me.
I will bleed. Prepare yourselves.
Alright, now we just have to take this guy out. I think Fiona's actually too far away. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Minion.
Oh, hey, goblins.
Aim. One's dead.
Slange.
Blood is the only truth.
Bottoms up.
Your gods will not save you.
Dragon.
Come on, you tinkers!
I will skin you for that. No neckans to firmat.
Aim. Right between
Stand aside. Get out of my...
Poor guy. He never stood a chance. Alright, one more bouncing chest to loot, and then it's time to confront Zonta. A pair of boots, a rusty knife, and a potato. Apparently these cultists were traveling light. Now let's have one last look around, and then we'll take on the Wraith. Okay, let's get in there.
Ah, there you are. You are the assassins who killed Mangar, yes? And you have my reliquary. Well, no matter. I am a planner, a thinker. I have prepared for your arrival. Eodvast's ancestors fitted this throne room with a way of taking care of petitioners who displeased them.
Uh-oh. Something's coming. Look at them all! How many of them are there?
I stopped counting when I got to 99.
And that brings us to the end of the current alpha test. Like I said when we started, it's still pretty rough around the edges, and obviously it needs a lot more content, but this gives us a good idea of what the developers have planned for the final product, which they're still hoping to release by the end of the year. Personally, I already think the game looks pretty promising, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the upcoming beta. If you think that Bard's Tale 4 looks like the sort of game that you might be interested in, you can find out more on the official website, the official YouTube channel, or the original crowdfunding campaign over on Kickstarter. As always, links are in the description.